Hey everyone, thank y'all for tuning in. This is our Unity webinar. It's being recorded, so make sure if you want your camera to be showing, it will be recorded, just letting you know. Other than that, make sure you type in any questions in the chat, and I'll pass the microphone over to Ms. Castleman.
Thank you so much. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Kaylin Castleman. I am a project coordinator for the diversity recruiting team at Unity and your moderator for tonight's Fireside Chat. Before we do get started, quick thing, if you would like to stay connected with Unity after the conference, please feel free to use the QR code that is running in the Latinx and Gaming Zoom picture. Okay. So this afternoon, it is my pleasure to present tonight's Fireside Chat guest, Unity's own Harris McKay. In the next 30 minutes, we will dive into Harris's work and the journey he took to get where he is at today. We'll start off with some questions from myself, and then I'll open the floor up to the audience. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Okay. Well, now let's get into the questions. Gonna start us off with an easy one here, Harris. What do you do at Unity, and how did you become interested in the Unity tool?
Right. So right now I'm on the solutions team. So we're basically users of the Unity engine, not actually developing the engine itself. So all kinds of weird projects, contracts for companies that decide they want something 3D or they want something like a game, but they can't do it themselves. So we make a team and design the thing along with the client and make whatever it is they want. And I originally got into Unity the obvious way. I wanted to make video games. And I was working on a video game myself for years, sort of in my off time. And that was how I got this job in the first place. There weren't a lot of Unity devs around the area, especially that were willing to work a job that wasn't specifically games. So, yeah.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you for giving us that little sneak peek into how you got here. Our second question from me is, what inspired you to pursue a career in software engineering?
Right. So this one's a bit of a funny story. Growing up, I knew like nothing about computers. My family didn't even have a computer in our house until like, I don't know, probably in the middle of high school. But in high school, I got to do this sort of sampler course of different electives, and one of them was IT. And I just found it really fun. I really liked it. And it just kind of went from there. I just turned out that programming was something I enjoyed. And at the end of when I was at graduation, my teacher told me, he said, "Hey, you should consider pursuing a career in this." And I hadn't even really considered the possibility for some reason until he said that. So I was lucky. Things kind of just landed in place for me. I know a lot of people have much more complicated journeys, but
Mm,
yeah.
Okay, awesome. It's interesting that you like mentioned that, oh, I got into this in high school. Do you remember any like past high school like development things that you did while you were in those classes or
Yeah, I remember one thing. We were supposed to make a game. I can't remember what like the requirements of this project was, but I think it was like a final project type thing.
Mhm.
I think it just needed to be a choose your own adventure text-based game. Very simple, very minimal requirements. But my friend and I were in the class kind of challenged each other to make way more complicated ones than we were required. I ended up making a whole game kind of with a Pokemon type system where there was turn-based battles and different moves you could learn and such, which was a lot more than we needed to for the project. So I remember thinking that was super fun. And my friend putting a back door into my game while I was in the washroom so he could beat it in one by typing in one password. So yeah.
Right. Awesome. Nice, nice. All right, we're going to get into some questions around career challenges now. So, could you share some of the biggest challenges you've faced in software engineering, in your engineering career, and how you overcame them?
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of small challenges along the way. I definitely say some of the bigger ones are just when you're starting out, or starting out on a new team even. A lot of the time, it's overwhelming when you start with a new team where everyone's been on some project or working on something for years maybe, and you have no idea where you're going, what you're doing,
Mm,
uh, or when you're doing a new technology, a new tool, something like that. Oftentimes I think like the expectation that you will be able to know what you're doing and figure it out gets in the way of the reality that it's a lot easier if you just ask for help or admit that you're lost. Definitely, uh, learn to just Google things, and if there's someone around who's been doing this thing for a long time, uh, it's okay. It's okay to just be like, hey, what does this acronym mean? How does this thing work? I think I've struggled with letting myself do that a lot.
mm. That's a really good answer because I think a lot of times, like when we're starting like a new job or starting to do something new, we think we have it all figured out. And it's that pride that kind of stops us from like asking for help because we feel like we have to have all those things known already and memorized. And that's not the case. It's so much easier if you just ask for help from a peer or from someone on your team. So definitely can attest to that as well. All right. So, other than software development, what else have you ventured into in tech, and how did you get interested in those fields?
Right. Quite a few things. I really like building computers, which I got into because I wanted a computer and could not afford one. My family could not afford a computer back in the day, so I Frankensteined one out of parts from computers from my school that they were getting rid of. Like, one piece was broken in it, so they got rid of the whole thing. So that's been a fun side project and interest for a long time. And recently, I've been super into 3D printing. Um, I think I have my roommate to blame for that. I kept mentioning things that were broken. He's like, "Oh, you could 3D print a replacement." Uh, and so, yeah, I've been really into that. Learning a bit more about CAD software, so computer aided design to make things to 3D print. And then most other tech things I'm into are really byproducts of wanting to make games.
Mm,
So a little bit of pixel art, a lot of music production, um, and those kinds of things like music production, video editing, whatever. They're always overwhelming because that's someone's whole life. That's someone's whole career is just making music or just making art. So trying to get into it just a little bit on the side is always interesting.
makes sense. Makes sense. Can you, just out of curiosity, can you share anything that you've 3D printed before, or your anything that you've used, or
Yeah, I've got a lot of things around. Let me think. Most things I've 3D printed are like custom hooks to put stuff on the wall. Save space. A lot of those things were like, if this is a product that exists, it'd be cheap, but it doesn't exist. Um, I've got behind my screen, so I guess I can't really show it. I've got a hook for my VR headset that unfortunately I've pretty much only really used for work so far. But I do want to play Half-Life Alyx sometime, so got a nice hook there for it, so it's not sitting on the floor.
cool, cool. Definitely. I'll get into our next question. So this is a skills question. What are some important skills or qualities that you believe every software engineer should possess?
Uh, well, first and foremost is a bit of a weird one, but I really do believe this, and I think that a lot of people get into this field sort of without this, and it's unfortunate. I think that you should fundamentally like doing software development. It sounds weird,
Yeah.
and I get that a lot of people do jobs that aren't necessarily what they love, but I just think it can be such a drain on the mind to solve these problems all day. So you better enjoy solving puzzles and figuring things out. Um, that's carried me this far for sure. Um, Beyond that, yeah, it's solving puzzles, and I guess on the other side of it is sort of have this balance, is to see the bigger picture sometimes. I think very many devs, myself included,
Mhm.
really don't see the forest for the trees, get so focused on a little detail. And when you're working in the industry, you're working with a team usually. So you got to consider how your stuff is going to integrate with everyone else's and so on and so forth.
Awesome. That's really good advice. It's great. Thank you. Last question from me, and then we'll take some questions from the chat. What are you working on lately? Professional and personal.
Professionally, I'm on a project for the Vancouver airport around where I live. We're making a digital twin for them, which is a fancy buzzword for like a copy of a physical place with data from real-time sensors in it. So they have all sorts of things to count how many people are in lines, or if there's a big delay at the airport or a security incident or whatever. And so this app, they can just bring it up on a computer or their phone. They can see a map of the whole airport and see what issues are going on, see if someone's already assigned to deal with it. So it's an internal tool for YVR, and it's pretty cool. It seems pretty useful for them, so it's fun.
Nice. Nice. Before you get into what you're working on personal, can you elaborate on digital twins?
Right. So yeah, this is a big thing for Unity recently, especially for the part of Unity I work with. Um, a lot of companies sort of got excited about the Internet of Things or having all these, internet connected sensors and stuff, installed them all, and then we're like, what are we doing with this? We have all this data. We have no way to look at it. It's kind of a repeat of when companies first started to collect data in the first place and then realized that Excel spreadsheets weren't enough to handle it all. So digital twin is one of the ways to sort of make all that data useful to to a company. So in this case, YVR has all these sensors. Now they can actually see um, what's going on in the airport in real time, which is pretty useful.
Cool. That sounds really, really fancy, honestly. So excited to see when that comes out and you can share it broader. All right. So I am going to take some questions from the chat. We've got our first question here, and it says, what advice would you give individuals looking to make a career shift into tech/gaming when they are already in their 30s?
Right. I've known a lot of people who've made that shift at like various points of their career. Um, there's quite a few different ways to go about it. One one thing to note is that you don't really need a degree to go into tech, which is I think a huge relief for a lot of people because that's a lot of time, effort, and money. Um, if you're the type that doesn't like self-learning, there's a lot of boot camp things out there, but make sure that you're picking one with good reviews. I've heard that some are very reputable and do a great job. Some are almost a scam. But I know some people who've done those boot camps and then have gotten a job, really good job right away. And if you are good with self-directed learning, then there are amazing free websites out there to teach you any programming language, any tool, whatever it is. So I think just decide what kind of thing you're most interested in developing and go for that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. All right. Our next question is, with your current job and its responsibilities, how easy is it to keep up with new technologies? Is it kind of tiring to come home and have to learn new skills?
Um, I'd say that just like at my job, it's a really like good situation for that. Because I'm working on so many different projects and jumping around every few months, I do have to learn a lot of new skills. But Unity is really good for giving devs the time and the space to do that. I'll usually have time between projects where uh, basically my job is to go learn something new. Uh, and when I'm on a new project, there usually is time to learn all that new stuff. I mean, I've done VR, AR, iPhone, all sorts of weird platforms lately, and so I guess I'm lucky I don't have to do a lot of that learning at home. Um, so it isn't as tiring, but it is interesting. You have to be ready to be learning your whole career. I don't just learn one thing and then I do it.
Mm. Have you learned anything new skill wise that you've been able to like implement like in your own projects?
So much, lots of stuff. it, all the sort of web connectivity stuff I knew, I
Mm.
learned it was at work, and then I was able to use that. Um, I think the biggest thing is like developer like tools, tips and tricks with IDEs and how best to debug things, plugins and things like that. A lot of people have that I've worked with have shown me things like that that apply to any project, and that's always super helpful.
Nice, nice. All right. We're going to move to our next question, which is what were the what were the favorite projects you worked on for Unity or the ones you felt like were the most impactful? That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Favorite projects? Oh man, there's been so many. I did a pretty cool AR one that I don't think I'm allowed to talk much about, but uh, it was like an AR shopping thing without saying much more than that. And that one felt like it solved a solved a bit of a silly problem that I have in real life. Not being able to find things in stores, not wanting to spend forever in the supermarket. That one was cool. Um, Most impactful is a trickier one. It might actually be the one I'm on right now, because I think over 100 something employees use it every day at
Mm,
YVR to manage what they're doing, which is I mean, if it makes people's jobs easier, that's a good thing, I think.
nice, nice. To add a little twist to that question, if you could work on something, what would it be that you haven't worked on before?
Ooh, that's interesting. I'd like to do more game projects at work. I've only done a couple. Um, and honestly, I think it'd be fun to work on the Unity editor itself at some point. Uh, it's definitely, as a user of it, you start to think there's things I could fix here. Uh, so that would be fun for sure.
Cool, cool. All right. Next question for portfolios. Where do programmers put their work? And how do they highlight the components they worked on, whether it's mechanical or enemy? I may have said that wrong, but
Um, I think most people just put it on GitHub, uh, just publicly there. That usually looks really good to employers if you have a very active, busy GitHub with a lot of contributions, be they to your own projects or to open source ones. I'm a bit guilty of not putting a lot of things up on GitHub. Most of the things I worked on personally were personal projects, video games. I didn't want it publicly out there until I was going to release it. So in those cases, it worked out though, because I was able to go to employers and just show them myself or tell them myself about it. Um, as for highlighting which parts you've done, I guess if an employer really is going to look into it, they would be able to see that on your GitHub, what kind of things you were committing, what changes you were making. But that's more of like a topic that comes up in conversation when talking to a recruiter or an interviewer, what have you.
okay. Cool. All right. Looks like we've got one more question from the chat in case anyone wants to send some more in. But the next one is, as someone who is open to working within the game industry, but shifting to game related software, specifically in stuff like engineer software, how do you feel game development skills are used or abstracted into engine work? Do you have to make an engine like Unity capable to use to more use cases and draw upon experiences in your development?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think when working on tools for games development, like a game engine like Unity, it really helps to have as many eyes on it with the perspective of an actual game developer. Uh, sort of back to the losing the forest for the trees thing. If you don't have that perspective of an actual user of whatever app you're working on, I think you'll miss the point. So um, I think that the skills that you've developed as a game developer, uh, knowing how best to do things will guide you how to make an app that makes it easy to do things in those ways, sort of. So, and I think definitely as for making the engine, uh, applicable to more use cases, yeah, I mean, I guess that also comes from like, what use cases did you feel were necessary when you were making games? That'll help.
Nice. Nice. Okay, next question. How would you define Unity's culture? Were there any challenges on and after the pandemic?
Um, right. So my organization always feels a bit separate from the rest of Unity in a way. I mean, most of Unity is around working on or supporting the editor directly, whereas the solutions group, we're just using the editor. That being said, I think Unity's culture is fairly open and communicative. I've never really been in a company before where there's like a giant Slack channel where everyone can talk to anyone, but Unity has that despite being so huge. And people will reply directly to the CEO when he posts messages. So I think during the pandemic, if anything, that kind of got what's the word here? That uh, communicativeness only expanded. I guess because people weren't going in the office and talking to each other in person anymore. People got more bold with talking publicly, or I guess internally in Slack. So, and I think that a lot of Unity's culture is also um, sort of flexible, which is good for a development company. Uh, there isn't a lot of that kind of you have to follow these extremely strict rules kinds of things, which was surprising to me coming from my previous company. I remember I got a work laptop and I was like, hey, what can I install this app on it? Can I do this with it? And they were like, yeah, whatever you need. I was like, there's no rule, there's no list of approved software. They're like, no, you know what you're doing. So that's kind of how I describe it.
That's good. Okay. What kind of roles would you recommend applying for that, or excuse me, what kind of roles would you recommend applying that should be entry level friendly?
Right. I mean, that depends on what discipline you're in, if you're a designer or a developer or what have you. Um, but from a developer's point of view, we definitely take, if it's entry level, apply to those junior dev roles. Um, if you're in school or something, definitely try to get a internship or co-op.
Mhm.
Uh, but also, one really big thing to note is feel free to apply to just software developer roles, even though you're a junior software developer. That's how you view yourself. Several times in my life, I've applied for a role that was a step up from sort of the role I was. And if the interviews go well, they might just hire me as a level down anyway. They might just say, well, we were looking for a senior developer, but we'll take a developer.
Mm.
Uh, so, but really, I mean, when it comes to applying, it's a long process. Software dev interviews are very long, and you'll do a ton of them. And you'll not get jobs from ones where you think everything went great, and then other ones you'll think, oh, I definitely bombed that, and they'll give you an offer.
Mm.
I don't understand it either, so just keep at it.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that one too. I think like of course all the different coding activities you do are definitely great like practice for the next interview that you go on and the next interview that you go on, right? So that's great. And also when you said, like you've applied to roles that were like, I need so many years, even though I may not have that. I think that's also really great advice because I think a lot of times we see that and we're like, oh, I shouldn't go for this role or I shouldn't apply for this role. And we definitely should. You never know what's going to come out of it. So why not? Hmm. All right. So we've still got some more questions coming in. And the next one is, could you please talk a little bit more about the kind of, excuse me, talk a little bit more of the kind of projects different teams work on at Unity?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, again, since I'm in the solutions group, I don't know a lot about the core team. We do. There is sort of these emails that go out within Unity that tell the rest of Unity sort of what X or Y team has done the last month, and those are always cool to keep on top of. But um, I think my favorite ones are this team that basically just does low hanging fruit in the Unity editor. And whenever I see their updates, I'm always like, that has bugged me. That like, they've done such great things like the reorderable lists in the Unity editor. Like, why did it not have that for years? Um, but within the solutions group, I mean, that's such a variety of things that we do with Unity for customers. There's been um, a lot of VR apps, a lot of AR things, a lot of sort of demos, uh, bespoke company portal type things. I don't know. It's hard to really describe, especially because a lot of them are very much under NDA. So I can't be specific, but it's a huge variety. If you could imagine that there's a reason to do it in a game engine, like in something that has support for 3D, we've probably done it. Yeah.
Nice, nice. All right. Next question is any advice for designers?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I've worked with a lot of designers, and I feel like every one of them is like the most brilliant person I've ever worked with. And maybe that's just because I'm horrible at UI and UX, and I come to them with a question, and they're like, "Okay, we just move this part here, put a thing there." But I guess my advice for designers is, I mean, you're gonna have to get familiar with a lot of different tools very quickly. Um, all of the sort of the best designed projects I've worked on, there's some sort of tool like Forma, or I can't think of other ones off the top of my head, where um, the designer designs it in some sort of tool, usually a web tool, and then can just give that to the developers, and we can get the exact color, get the exact size, shape, icon, whatever. Um, And I think that's one of the hard parts of the job, is just every new team, every new project, you're like, okay, we use this thing, and they're all fairly similar, but um, yeah, but I don't know a lot about the design process really, because it's not what I do. I do have to do it myself for making my own games on the side, but it's always a struggle. I guess my advice there, from my own experience, is look up references. Look up
Mm.
references a lot. I spend a lot of time scrolling through long plays of video games on YouTube, looking for a very specific piece of the UI, like, oh, that's how they show this or that. Whereas when you're playing a game, if the UI is good, you don't think about it, or at least I don't. I don't really see it. So,
Mm. Okay. Okay. All right. We kind of already got into this one, but someone did ask, what are the most important qualities of a successful software engineer?
right. Yeah. So the two I mentioned before, really loving the job, but then also having the big picture in your head. Beyond that, I don't know. I guess if you want to go the extra step and be very successful, though I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, there is a lot of value in being good with communication, and meetings and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it is the reality of the job, and I think a lot of software devs uh, sort of push back on that for a long time. I've seen this journey a lot as people become go from junior to regular and then to senior and then further and further in their career. They're like, I just want to code. I don't want to do anything else. So prepare yourself. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
I am. Thank you. Next question. May not be able to answer this one, but we'll give it a shot. Are there any specific roles for people interested in computer graphic, post-processing effects, and shaders?
Yeah, I have no visibility like off the top of my head into what roles are available. Really, I see the same info on that as anyone else does on the public job postings. But I do know that there is a lot of work going on in that area at Unity. That's something that Unity is working very hard on improving. So I imagine that there is, if not right now roles, going to be roles to do with that. That's definitely an area of programming that I want to learn more about myself. So
Amazing. Awesome. Well, we are over time. So we do have a few questions left. But if you would like, we definitely can answer them in our booth tomorrow. And so, because of time, we're just going to go ahead and wrap up. So, I just want to give a big thank you to Harris for speaking with us tonight and sharing your story and answering all these amazing questions from these amazing attendees. And I also want to say huge thank you to Conexion audience for having us. We truly enjoyed our time, and we hope you did as well. Again, if you would like to stay connected with us, please feel free to use the QR code that is in the Latinx in Gaming Zoom picture. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day.